Gemini, Sun, Moon, and Rising. This is your tarot reading for the week ahead. Lots of duplicity, duality coming up in the week ahead. You have the Two of Pentacles, the Two of Wands, and the High Priestess, which is ruled by the number 2. Seems very fitting as the symbol and sign for Gemini is the two twins. So it's not going to be necessarily unfamiliar territory, but lots of choices, lots of weighing up of options. What's the best thing to do? That's particularly true as we have the Devil card here in your reading. And the Devil card, before you gasp, before you get upset, before you worry, has been appearing in lots and lots of spreads this week. So you're no exception. But part of that weighing up of options is it morally the right thing to do according to you? These aren't necessarily societal mores or morality. So it's not what other people think is correct and right, but what weighs heavy on our conscience, conscience, there we go. Particularly with the Devil, that's exactly what it shows. It's those times that we do things that are, I'm going to use the word unethical. That doesn't mean that we're robbing or doesn't mean pillaging in any particular way. This could just be that low level thing where we feel that pang, that internal pang of, maybe I shouldn't have said that, maybe I shouldn't have done that. So there may be times this week where you face, in some ways, ethical dilemmas. Again, this isn't necessarily Sophie's choice. These aren't ethical dilemmas on a grand scale, but it could be as simple as, should I actually have that extra glass of wine? Should I actually be kind of intoxicated as much as I can? So you may have to find that you keep yourself morally in check this week. Sounds a bit grim, bit serious, but again, this could just be low level stuff. Sometimes when we start becoming in the proximity with our family, and I've been saying this to a lot of people, unsurprisingly, a lot of the star signs, unsurprisingly, it can bring things up. And sometimes we say things or do things that we don't necessarily mean. So it's a little bit about kind of keeping a curb on that, holding your tongue when necessary. But also, what I've been saying again and again and again as the Devil card appears is, are we keeping our focus solely on the material world, what we're giving, what we're getting, or actually are we looking at the spiritual aspects of Christmas? What is our spiritual practice like over this festive season? Because first and foremost, it is meant to be that. It's meant to be a point of spiritual respite. But for you, I would say that it's more about, as a kind of weighing up the devil and the angel that sits on your shoulders and which one to give into. Again, unsurprising that this is appearing in your sign, Gemini. Whether there are choices as well as to where you're meant to be, who you're meant to give most attention to. Are you caught between family politics? Should we be with that family or that family? Again, these things that may very well weigh up in your mind. I say a lot of this because, as I mentioned there before, we've got the High Priestess, which is Boaz and Joachim, the pillars at the Temple of Solomon. And this is the yang and yin aspect. Again, very much showing duality. So you may find in some places that you're between a rock and a hard place. But as long as you keep listening to your intuition, and as long as you keep thinking, well, does this internally feel the right thing to do? Then great. It's sometimes we mistake, is this internally the right thing to do, with selfishness as the same thing, and it isn't. Just because it feels good for you doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do. Are there ways this week that we could perhaps be more generous of spirit? Is there ways that we could perhaps be less, to be quite blunt, selfish? Is this the best option for them? Can I be more generous? Can I be more helpful? Can I put their needs, their wants, and their requests into consideration with some of my decision making? Of course, you've got to use discernment as, am I running after everybody? Am I trying to please everybody? If that's the case, then that's no good either. But as long as you are saying, checking in with your decision making, what you're saying, your thoughts, your actions, and your beliefs, as long as you're checking in and going, actually, do I feel that this for me is the most correct course of action, the most helpful and compassionate thing to say? And if the answer is yes, then great. But it is just that moral check-in. But you really, I mean, I couldn't kind of stress this anymore. Just the fact that you have all of these twos and being the sign of Gemini, it's you are likely to be weighing up. You can literally see the weighing up of options in the Two of Pentacles and the weighing up of potential in the Two of Wands. So it might not necessarily be clear cut for you this week. It might not necessarily be obvious. This is what I want to do. This is the way. But as I say, as long as you're listening to your intuition, which is what the High Priestess represents, being able to listen to that feminine aspect of you, the divine feminine, that receptivity, that passivity, then in some ways you can't really go wrong. Because of this balancing of options, this weighing up of options, looking at what is the most potential, you may find that the Knight of Pentacles in reverse plays out in your week. Normally the Knight of Wands, being able to charge ahead, there's a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of forward movement, there's a lot of excitement. Because that is showing up as reversed, you may feel that, well, you can't kind of chase that pleasure-seeking side of you. Again, this is partly why I've been saying, will you have to consider the options, the wants, the requests of other people, and that might feel slightly interrupting. That's not necessarily a bad thing by any means. Again, you will have to check in with yourself. Am I being slightly selfish here? Am I just doing this because this is what I want? Or actually, am I considering the whole? Am I considering how this changes the dynamic for people in general? What I would also argue is perhaps that sense of stillness and that sense of not necessarily lurching forward might be useful and might be beneficial. Sometimes that that fight or flight response, bit of a mouthful, is sometimes is very protective. But sometimes it's a knee-jerk reaction. When people say something we don't like or is a bit challenging, or there is a scenario and situation that arises that we have a strong aversion to, our response can be to fly away, to charge off. That's what the knights are best at. They're best at charging off into the lands and making new discoveries. So the fact that you may find yourself in stillness and quote unquote being stuck in one spot may bring about new challenges, new perspectives, unfamiliarity that at times might feel a bit uncomfortable. It may surprise you to hear that the Devil card can sometimes be a really beneficial card. Indeed, sometimes it's my favorite card in the deck because it shows what isn't working. So because you're not able to just flit out of these situations to Scarpa, great word, to Scarpa, means that you might have to kind of sit with some of these challenging thoughts, some challenging feelings, and challenging emotions. But out of that could come resolution, integration, understanding on a deeper level. So don't necessarily assume that being quote unquote stuck is necessarily a bad thing. Try and sit with it. Try and look at what is rising up for you, particularly in times of discomfort or in particular times where maybe I'm speaking for personal experience here. I'll let you guess, but maybe those times you want to go to your room and slam the door and shut yourself off from the world. What is that trying to point towards? Because if you can go through that and push through that and work through that, and it's not even pushing through it, I think it's just allowing that experience to come towards you, then there can be greater insight and understanding, and something gets resolved. So as much as the Devil may kind of shake things up and seem a bit challenging, again, this is why there is this weighing up of options. Do I need to run or do I need to sit with this? Is this the kind of morally the right thing to do, or am I just leaning more into what feels good, what makes me feel good, what I want? So in many ways, this feels perhaps quite a lot of the other readings that I've been speaking about, as I mentioned before, are overlooking this spiritual edge to this week ahead, particularly as the Devil appears. But actually, for you, Gemini, I feel that you're able to take on those challenges and take on those difficulties and look at, okay, what is this trying to teach me? What is this trying to reveal? Ultimately, what is the lesson here? but exciting. And some of this weighing up may also very well apply to 2025. What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Should I do this? Should I do that? So there's a feeling of the world being open. The world is your oyster in 2025. So it's not that you're very restricted and limited in what you can do next, even though sometimes it may feel like that, but that doesn't feel to be the reality. But perhaps there's this quite kind of binary, very stark choice between should I do that or should I do this? And in some ways that might feel daunting. As I mentioned, as long as you follow your intuition and follow what feels morally correct, then you can't really go wrong. So I really hope that that helps. Have a great, great festive break. If you want a more rounded reading or more information, I've whetted your appetite, then be sure to check out your ascendant sign and your sun sign. If you're not sure how to do that, it's really worth visiting the website, wellnessfoundry.co.uk. But otherwise, have a great, great rest of the week and see you next time. Bye for now.